Hey everyone, Bill Sheridan with the Maryland Association of CPAs. Today's topic, XBRL, and it's been a crazy year for XBRL so far. First of all, this is year 3 of the SEC's mandate, which means that now pretty much all public companies are filing their financial reports through XBRL. The MACPA itself is serving as a case study of sorts for how private companies can make use of XBRL. And now even governments are getting into the act. The state governments in Nevada and Oregon kind of set the pace. And now other governments, including Maryland's, are starting to investigate XBRL and find out, whether or not it might be able to increase accountability and transparency on a governmental level. So a lot going on there. And with all that in mind, I had a chance to attend the 2011 XBRL US conference in Nashville, and while I was there I ran into Matherne, who is Chief of Taxonomy Development for the Financial Accounting Standards Board. And that got me thinking, what's going on with XBRL from the regulator's point of view? So I sat down with Lewis and asked him a few questions. He had some terrific insights into what they are about, some of the surprising things rather, that he's learned about XBRL so far. And also what role CPAs can be playing in all of this. Now here's a hint. He says, the sooner you guys can learn a lot about XBRL, the better off you're going to be. Here's Matherne. What's new on the XBRL front from FASB these days? What kind of stuff are you guys working on?
Well, our primary focus, let's step back from that for a moment, so be clear for your listeners what it is we actually do.
Okay.
Our primary responsibility, the FASB's primary responsibility, is the ongoing development and maintenance of the US GAAP taxonomy. What that means is that we're responsible for making sure that the taxonomy that is released on an annual basis has coverage of all new accounting standards and is highly usable by filers and other users. So there's a couple of things we're trying to achieve. The first is fairly obvious, is that the taxonomy has to reflect GAAP. The second really speaks to best practice or common practice, what how we see filers actually implementing the taxonomy, how they're using it. And so we spend a considerable amount of time actually looking at filings to understand how the filers have chosen to use the taxonomy for their particular filings. And that provides us a lot of very useful feedback into our process. So we go about all of this in a couple of ways. The first is, again, to stay on top of all the new accounting standards that are being released, and we work closely with the FASB staff that is responsible for developing those standards, working with the board, of course. And we then also look at the filings and make sure that we weave all of that together into what becomes the next release, or the next annual release of the taxonomy. And so we've now put together what is our 2012 proposed taxonomy. It's out for public comment as we speak. We released it on September 1, so it's got a 60-day comment period. We encourage all your listeners to take a look at it and provide us feedback. And then that taxonomy will be available sometime next year, early part of next year, for use by SEC registrants that are required to file the XBRL exhibits.
Any particular trends or anything that sticks out for you as you see this data come in about how XBRL is being used? What kind of sticks out for you at this point?
There's a couple of things. The first is just kind of macro. Extension rates are dropping, materially dropping. Now, I'd like to think that they're dropping because we've done such a bang-up job on the taxonomy from the 2009 to the 2011, and I'm sure that's a factor. But there's several things that contribute to that. Filers and the service providers that work with filers are just doing a much better job in their element selection. And so we're seeing that we're really starting to see that play out. And I think one of the things that contributes to that is that filers actually look at what their peers are doing, which is really fascinating in this process. Is that, a filer, I just had a conversation with someone where they were asking me a question about one of the best practice recommendations that had come out of the best practice committee of XBRL US, and they pointed out that if they adopted that, their filing would now be inconsistent with their peers, which is a really interesting point that needs to be factored in our process. But long story short, it really does have a significant impact, filers are looking at what their peers are doing, and as a general rule, they don't want their financial statements to stand out inappropriately, you know, because of some choice they've made that may have been arbitrary. The other thing that is incredibly fascinating about this process is that we now have so much data in the system now. You know, we've got several thousand filings now in the system. We're starting to see patterns and information about the filings that just you could not easily get at before. And you know, we've got several individuals in the community, many of the data aggregators looking at that information, and things are starting to pop out that you just couldn't have gotten your head around before, not easily.
Anything specific? Anything in particular?
You know, one of the things that I saw recently, I'm not sure it's the greatest example in the world, but someone was looking at how revenue was being reported for different companies, and there was this one particular company that had chosen to extend. Now, we can make a lot of assumptions about what should be in the revenue line item, but everybody's revenue is not the same. And so on one hand, you might think, well, everybody should tag revenue the same way. But in reality, it might be better to tag it at a more granular and a more specific way because your revenue is different in some subtle manner. And that's some of the things we're starting to see. Another example has to do with cash flow. So on the cash flow statement, there's certain things you're expected to break out. And they, at the end of the day, they sum to your increase-decrease in cash. Now, we have seen some examples where some of those items are actually separated from the increase-decrease in cash. They're broken out separately. Now, visually, you look at it, you read the statement. It really doesn't matter too much, I don't think, because you can read it and you can understand what's going on. But in reality, those items should all be components of increase-decrease in cash. And as soon as you apply XBRL to it, you now have a dilemma because the item they've used, the element they have chosen to tag that increase-decrease is not actually the increase-decrease for cash. And so when you start using a tagging language like XBRL, there's just things that you've got to be much more careful about. You know, the English language, you know, it's very subjective. A label or a caption or the way you present things is very, very subjective. XBRL requires a degree of precision in your modeling, which I think is a positive thing, that the English language does not require. And that, to me, is one of the biggest things we're starting to see, and that really is very revealing about financial statement presentation. But we're starting to see a lot of that. There's a lot of analysis going on right now in these different styles of presenting that you would not have picked up on before.
So what's next? What are you guys working on that CPAs might need to be aware of?
You know, the biggest benefit that we have from XBRL is that it really is making financial information available in a way we didn't have it before. It is truly democratizing the capital markets, and it's going to have a lot of benefit for medium-sized and small-size companies, public companies particularly. The implications for CPAs broadly is that we are taking the exchange of financial information into a place that we've really not been before. And CPAs are going to be expected to be knowledgeable about what's going on in this space, and they should be prepared to help public companies, and when this meets private companies, help them as well with this exchange of financial information, because everybody's going to be calling for it.
What kind of opportunities are there for CPAs who might not have been paying attention to this before? What can they take advantage of going forward?
You know, XBRL, it's perceived by a lot of people as this techie thing. And there certainly is a technology component to it, just as the internet has a technology component to it. But what really makes the internet sing isn't the technology that's needed, but what makes the internet work is all of the commerce and all of the other important activities, the social networks and so on. That's really what the internet is all about. So XBRL is really about more valuable financial information and exchanging that information. And so what we're seeing XBRL enabling, just as the internet enables e-commerce and social media, what XBRL is doing is enabling this greater exchange of information and this greater collection of information, this greater analysis of information. And so CPAs need to be a part of that equation going forward, whether we're talking about potentially opining on that information or just helping their clients understand what this is going to mean for them as they start to exchange their information in this new medium. The other important thing is, again, so it's not about technology, but it is about data modeling or financial modeling. And CPAs are modelers. They don't think about it that way, but the basic idea of putting together a GL system or putting together a financial report, that is modeling. And that's all XBRL is really about. It's one of the most important basic pieces of the process of helping, really of understanding XBRL is, can you conceptually model? So if you can model a journal entry, you can model XBRL and help your clients with the preparation of their financial statements using this new medium of communication.
I could kind of imagine what the answer would be, but going forward, having that knowledge, that experience in XBRL, what's that going to mean for CPAs going forward? There's got to be some kind of competitive advantage there that for folks who know this stuff.
I think the advantage is huge. I think the advantage will XBRL creates a real advantage for the CPA that has this skill set. XBRL really is a transformative tool for financial reporting. We heard Mike Starr say today that XBRL is a disruptive technology, and it truly is. It's changing the way we think about things. It's changing the way that we exchange information. And so a CPA is in an excellent position to help their clients and those related to their clients understand that and make the best out of it. And I've seen young students coming out of college that they've taken the opportunity to learn. Recent graduates have taken the opportunity to learn XBRL, and it's given them some career opportunity that wasn't there before. I don't think you can really be a part of financial reporting and accounting in the future without understanding this very fundamental piece of the exchange and analysis of financial information.
Louis, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You were welcome.